All right, Dan, we will turn it back over to you so we can
All
go
right.
to some next presentations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm going to launch into mine because John gave me the proper intro when he introduced me as the MC. And thank you. I don't know if anybody even noticed, but I got booted. The computer crashed. I'm back. This is what we do in live streams. This is what we do. We just take, and if I get killed again in the middle of it, the next speaker will be Peter Ainley, and Peter will just pick it up, and then we'll clean up the mess later. That's all you can do. All you can do when we do technology issues. So today, I'm going to encourage everybody to question everything, even what I'm getting ready to tell you, even what all the other previous speakers have told you. I'm telling you to question everything. So staying sane through critical thinking, because in today's world, people will gaslight you. They will try to convince you that you're wrong, that your thoughts have no value. Let me ask you this. Do you ever think about thinking? So it's got a little callback to Isabella's presentation, right? Do you ever think of thinking, or are you just in the experience? Are you a reactive person? Are you a proactive person? Do you allow others to trigger you? That's the big buzz phrase. I get triggered. I need a safe room. What you're saying is I need a timeout to think and process because we're so overwhelmed with messages today. Do you blindly accept what you hear or read without question? Are you open to new ideas, or are you always right? Have you ever used the phrase, I don't agree, but you're entitled to your wrong opinion, right? That's a little joke, right? Uh, and this will date me, but I I just had this picture in my mind. If you guys remember back in the 90s, Arsenio Hall had a talk show. And what was his thing? Things that make you say, right? That was his big one of his, yeah, that was generally during his monologues. So think about these questions I've just asked you as we move forward. So here's the good news. The good news today is you are not required to show up for every fight or argument that you're invited to. Isn't that awesome? Wouldn't the world be a better place if nobody felt like they were required to show up for a fight or an argument? Second piece of good news. You're in control of your response and the timing of that response. Think of that. The first time I heard about the pause, take a pause for the cause, was way back in my corporate days at Sprint. Was right after the 7 Habits book came out by Stephen Covey. And the diagram was stimulus and response. And what you do is you enter a circle in between those two and pause, stimulus and response. Now, other than life threats, because that's when the physiology, the biology kicks in. Lee mentioned that in the 5 modalities. Other than life threats, you're not required to respond immediately. If there's a fire in the house, you don't need to think, I wonder if I should leave where the heat and the flames are coming from and the smoke, right? So, how do you recognize red flags when people are working probably not in your best interest? So when I did in corporate investigations, there were 4 underlying elements to any investigation, and this played out. I've done thousands of investigative interviews, hundreds of investigations, and then multiple clients when I made the switch from a corporate life to an entrepreneurial life. So the 4 underlying elements to any investigation is community, power and control, money, and sex. Now, before you get excited about the sex part, it's not what you think. All right. Community is that you are given permission to be part of the community as long as you abide. So community, the power and control piece is goes back to leadership, which is you do this because I'm your boss and I told you to. That's power and control. The money piece for the investigations I did was either desperation or greed. I stole that money to feed my kids. That's the extreme desperation. Or I found a loophole and nobody's going to miss that 100 grand. So I just did it. All right. And then the last one, which is sex. We're not going to talk about sex today. Because it really goes back to power and control. So when I did investigations, one or more, most of the time, 2 or 3 of those fit into an investigation. So that's a red flag when somebody's trying to exert control over your thinking or what you should be thinking. I want you to consider your family dynamics. This goes back to what Chella, Katerina, Isabella was talking about. What messages have been imposed upon you with your family dynamics? Who's really in charge? If you go in and say, let's take a vote, and everybody looks to dad or everybody looks to mom, you know who's in charge. I'm telling you right now. So when you think of the red flags, just in today's world, think politics, religion, social issues, gun control, abortion, whatever. Everybody's going to have an opinion or very strong emotional feelings. What I will remind you is that remember that those who seek to divide you seek to control you. I'll say that again. Those who seek to divide you seek to control. Just chew on that a minute. Now, here's some common triggers. And this goes back a little bit back to what Sebastian was saying. What others say to you, good news, not in your control. How's that good news? I'll get there. What others say about you, not in your control. Now, we want to have a good reputation. We want to have a good brand. We want to be thought about as a good person. But ultimately, what they say about you is not in control. What you say about yourself is in your control. So what are you saying about yourself today? Now, next step. Permission to question everything. And yes, I was that child that asked why until my dad got frustrated and told me to go away. So eternally curious. And that's probably, I know that contributed to being a good investigator. So here's a key question. If you want to put people on notice that you're not buying what they're selling without some additional data points, here's the question. It's a pattern interrupt question. And the question is, how would you know if that wasn't true? And that's a showstopper, folks. People come at you and they want to talk about their candidate, or they want to talk about an issue, or they want to talk about a family issue, a personal issue. And you just basically look at them straight through to the eyes and you say, let me ask you this, Elaine, how would you know if that wasn't true? Now, you have to be in rapport to do this. You can't be in the middle of a beat 'em up, smash 'em up, right? You have to be that calm. That goes back to EG's, to Sebastian's 20 things he said, the same thing 20 times every morning, every evening. And then the second piece of that is then you have to use your discernment. Do others have a readiness to hear you? Don't know. If they do not lean in and say, tell me more, if they get to that point where you ask the question and they don't accept willingness to readiness to hear you, it's like pushing a wet rope up a hill. It doesn't work. Are they? So in Henry Cloud's book, Necessary Endings, he described 3 types of people in the world: the wise, the foolish, the evil. Now, the wise person, if they get challenged or if they get to explain themselves, or receive some sort of direction, admonishment, criticism, they will consider that. And maybe they'll apologize. If they don't apologize, maybe they'll make adjustments in their behavior going forward. A foolish person will not, they'll blow past that. They won't even hear it. They won't acknowledge it. And then the third, so wise, foolish, and evil. The evil person are people that just have ill intentions for you, and they will do everything they can to sabotage you, whether that's through lawsuits, through bad mouthing, through spreading rumors. Now, Henry says in his book, the only way you fight evil people was with lawyers, guns, and money. So I'm not advocating guns. I'm just saying if you've got somebody that's working against you, that you need to avoid. Are they foolish? Are they just evil? Do they have ill intentions for your life? So here is the action items, and then I'll give you some takeaways. My suggestion is this: when confronted with a piece of information, that you take a breath and you pause between the stimulus and response. The second step for action items is acknowledge the emotion, name it, and then reframe it. Look for the lesson to be learned out of whatever has triggered you. And then the third part, and this kind of goes back to what Lee was talking about, resist others' attempts to place their version of reality upon you. What is your reality? What do you believe and know and desire for yourself versus what's been impressed upon you? That can be parents, family, friends, social circle, religion, whatever that is. What messages have been imprinted upon you? And then the last thing, our takeaways. Here's what I want to encourage you with is trust your instincts and your intuition. Your instincts and intuition will give you that gut feeling. And just like Katerina and the horses will know. They will know. And they will let you know if you're not a fit for, if your energy is not a fit for their energy. The second takeaway, ask yourself, will this matter in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years from now? That is a great way to figure out if the current issue at hand really matters in the long run. The third takeaway, spend as much time in reflection and thinking for yourself, by yourself, as you spend on social media or mainstream media. Ooh, that one's got to hurt somebody because we are tied to our devices. So whatever time you're spending on doom scrolling or IG or TikTok or any other social media site or application, spend as much time in reflection for yourself. And I'll leave you with this. And I sign all my messages off 95% of the time is practice grace, mercy, and love whenever possible. Grace is undeserved. Mercy is deserved, but you exercise mercy and bring love to everybody. And then I add it on whenever possible. People say, why did you do that? Because sometimes there are evil people in the world that mean you harm. Your first job is to take care of yourself, your family, and your 4 walls. Nothing else matters until all of that is tied up in a nice bow where you are providing the protection you need for your world. That's what I have for you today, Elaine. I'll turn it back to you before I introduce Peter.
You are some special version of brilliance. I want you to know that. I just put that in the chat. I appreciate you so much. That was amazing.